So I just want to start with a thank you to our partners. Huge respect for all of the work they're doing to make this happen. Hopefully by this time we spent a little bit of time in the room with them. My name is Bernard Slowey. I'm the Senior Vice President for Digital Customer Success at Salesforce, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means in a minute. I'm going to talk to you about our journey with Agentforce on the Help portal. And my goal today is two things. My goal is hopefully you take at least one thing, if not two things away from this that's going to help you in your journey. Because I truly believe over the next 12 to 18 months, everybody's going to be doing something with Agentforce. Right? Everybody's going to be doing something with Agentforce. And we have a lot of experience of what not to do and what to do well. So we want to share a little bit of that with you. A little bit about me. I'm from Dublin, Ireland, so I'm really proud to be back home today. I actually live in America. I live in North Carolina, Charlotte, so I got in yesterday. My wife is from Ireland. My son was born in Seattle, so for anyone who knows anything about American football, we're big Seahawks fans, so that's why he's in the gear there. That was the Super Bowl final. And I'm at Salesforce 5 years next week, I think, actually, so long time it feels like. Thank you. Before that, I was at GitHub, and before that, I was at Microsoft for 15 years, so you can do a boo on the Microsoft one if you want. All right, so I also want to say a massive thank you to the Salesforce community, especially the team that organized this event. I see some of the purple t-shirts around the room. This is my first time at the Irish event, and it's just incredible. I know all the work that goes into creating something like this, so huge thank you for all the work you've done to make this happen. And also thank you to all of you. You're part of the Salesforce ecosystem. Yeah, that deserves an applause. Come on. You're part of the Salesforce ecosystem, and honestly, I don't think anything is more important to Salesforce than our community. Honestly, I don't think Salesforce would function the way it does if we didn't have the community we have. That's my opinion. People might disagree with me, but I think it's the community that makes Salesforce what it is today. It always has and it always will do. That's my perspective on it. All right, so I want to tell you a little bit about how we do customer success at Salesforce. We're a pretty large organization, 9,500 people that manage our customer success organization globally. We serve 200,000 customers across the globe. Last year, we had 176 million touch points between human interaction and between digital. And you can see how our team is broken up. We have incredible support engineers, our customer success managers, our trainers who do a lot of the Salesforce certification, renewals teams, operations team. It's a huge function. And I lead our digital team. So what does that mean? My team is accountable for the help portal, for known issues. All of these type portals that help our customers self-serve is what my team drives. We're always thinking about how can we improve the experience to make it easy for our customers, or make it easier. And there you can see where we're located. We have a number of hubs around the globe. Very proud to say that Dublin is our EMEA hub. So all of our Dublin support, European languages, happens out of Dublin. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about our journey with Agentforce. You might be familiar with our help portal, and you might be familiar with what it looked like about 18 months ago, right? It's a really good resource. We've won industry awards for it being one of the best B2B portals out there, business to business. A lot of documentation. I'm sure many of you have been on it. You've looked at it. You've even probably contributed to some of our documentation. Here was the problem we faced. Many customers said it's too hard to find what I'm looking for when I need it quickly. They were frustrated with limited personalization, and they said it was quite difficult when I have complex problems to get what I need. So 2 Dreamforces ago, Mark announced Agentforce. I live my years now in Dreamforce, by the way. I don't know if everyone else is like that at Salesforce. It's like one Dreamforce to the other. So 2 Dreamforces ago, Mark announced Agentforce. So we saw an opportunity to reimagine this portal experience. We didn't take our content away, it all still exists, but we launched Agentforce on our portal. We did it pretty quickly, to be honest with you. We did it 4 weeks after Dreamforce. It's using all of our content that's on the help portal. It's also using content from other areas. We use Data 360 to align all of that content in the metadata. So it uses developer docs, Slack docs, all that powers it. And you can see we've had 3.2 million conversations since launch. That's a lot of conversations. I would say, and this is just Bernard's opinion, but when I look at B2B, I don't know any other company in the world that's driven that many conversations in a customer-facing AI agent when I think about B2B. Now, our resolution rate is about 62%, and I will have time for questions at the end, by the way, if you want to ask me about any of this. So it's doing a good job, but it's not doing a great job. And that's what I want to talk about today, is how we're going to get from good to great and some of the lessons that we took along the way. So I often get asked, you guys went live pretty quickly. Should you have waited until Agentforce was further along? And there's something that we pride ourselves on in my team and in Salesforce is what we call being customer zero. What does that mean? It kind of comes back to our Salesforce values, right? We want to be a showcase of our own technologies, right? We want to learn what it's like to implement our technology so we understand what's working and more importantly, what's not working so we can give that feedback back to our engineering and product teams. We're part of our product development lifecycle. I spend a lot of time with our Agentforce leadership, both our product and engineering leadership, giving them feedback on what's not working, what is working. We influence their roadmap. And then lastly, we're innovators, we're builders. We want to try these new Salesforce technologies so we can learn a little bit about them. So you'll hear Salesforce talk about that a lot. Customer zero is we should be using our own technologies if we're going to go talk about them. And that's what we did with Agentforce on the Help portal. What we learned was that for some customers, Agentforce on the Help portal does a really good job. They tend to be newer to Salesforce, right? They tend to have more basic type questions. When it comes to probably like many of you in the room, like MVPs, who often have done a lot of research before you come to our Help portal, it doesn't do a great job with them complex scenarios. And so that's our goal. How do we get from this current state of kind of early users, kind of generic FAQ, to the likes of questions that MVPs would ask? But just to give you some context, 2 years ago, we took 2.1 million support cases at Salesforce. 2.1 million. When we launched Agentforce, we reduced that by 30%. So it is solving a lot of that more basic how-to volume that customers would have contacted us about. It's taking that volume out. It no longer comes through to us. Now what we're doing is trying to iterate so we can kind of get to the next level. So how do we do that? We do it two ways. We get a lot of user feedback. When we think about user feedback, I was just having a conversation with these two ladies here on ID Exchange. ID Exchange is such a great way for us to get feedback. If you have ideas, put it in ID Exchange, people upvote it, it allows us to prioritize it on our roadmap. We have a small team in my team, a research and design team. We do research, I'll show you that, with MVPs, with novice users on how we can improve, how we can make it better. Social media, I get tagged a lot on LinkedIn. I get tagged on X quite a lot as well. Usually under Mark's messages, when he says something, I get tagged. And I'm always happy to go have them conversations of why we're doing what we're doing, because that feedback is always valuable, right? That feedback is always valuable. We make mistakes and we learn from that feedback. So social media is another way we learn. We also have a CSAT survey inside our agent. It's on a scale of 1 to 5. So we can see when we get negative CSAT, what happened? What happened in that conversation that the customer gave us a bad review? And then most importantly is around testing and monitoring. And I'm going to talk about this a lot later. In this world of agents, there's new roles being created. We have what we call agent managers today that are aligned by our clouds, so Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, etc. And they're looking at the performance of the agent per cloud. And what they do is they're testing our agent with another agent. So we have an agent testing the agent with something called synthetic utterances. The easiest way to think about this is we have a set of golden prompts. These are the way that we want the agent to respond, and we're constantly testing and evaluating on them prompts. I'll explain more on this later to make sure it's not kind of going out of whack of what we want it to do. Post-release, there was a great session this morning on observability, right? The most interesting thing in this world of agents, I went to college in Waterford, which is probably that way or this way, not too far from here. I had no idea what I wanted to do after school. My brother worked for Dell, and he said, you should go do computers. Y2K is coming, and the world's going to end. If anyone can remember that, I'm probably showing my age right now. So I went and I did COBOL and stuff like that, which, you know, came back to haunt me. I've never used it since. But the thing with that is they're all deterministic. Right? In a world of agents and LLMs, you're now dealing with a non-deterministic mechanism, right? How do you troubleshoot it? It's very, very different, right? I get the LinkedIn tags where, hey, it responded this way. Sometimes it does things that we don't know why it did it. Right? We've wrote a very clear instruction inside our topics, and it still doesn't follow exactly the way we do. So that feedback back to our engineering teams is why we've launched the new Agent Builder, because now you have the ability to do deterministic flows inside Agentforce where it makes sense. Okay, so let me show you a little bit on some of the research studies I talk about. So we did one recently, which was I think it was about 50 people, participants across all the way from MVPs to novice users. And what we were doing, our goal was to evaluate the answer quality and pinpoint breakdowns in the agent. So we're looking at things like tone, clarity, and trust. And what we saw was we did the same analysis 6 months before, was we saw an improvement in completeness, the completeness of the answer by 21%. We saw an improvement in tone and trust, right? It was getting better at how it was delivering a message. But we also saw key opportunities. What was really interesting to us is in the first turn or two at Agentforce, so the first question, the answer back, you go again, it did a very good job. But then it started to drop a little bit on turn 3, 4, and 5, right? And so that was a real learning for us, is why is it doing that, right? The second thing that was a big learning for us is confident wrong answers break down trust, right? We all know that guy in the room that when someone asks him a question, he answers before the question's even finished, and he sounds very confident in that answer. Sometimes our agent was responding with an answer when it didn't have enough information in the question. So a customer would ask just a few words in the prompt and the agent would respond. And what we needed to do was something called disambiguation, right? To go back and ask clarifying questions, just like a human agent would do, right? To seek to understand before it answers. So that's been a big focus for us in the last release that we've done. Okay, now, the biggest learning, at least I think I've made through this whole thing, is something that we call the knowledge cycle and the service cycle. What do I mean by that? We think about this as the heart and the brain, right? The brain is the answer factually correct, right? And whatever agents you build, that's what you're going to focus on, right? Is the answer factually correct? And that comes back to things like loading content, your metadata. In a world of agents, we actually had this new terminology called content collisions, right? We too much similar content. The agent was struggling on what do I chunk from when we too much similar content. So we had to do a lot of work with our content teams and others cleaning up some of that content. So we spent a lot of time on that at the start. But what we noticed was the agent was very cold. It was very robotic in how it answered questions. And I used to run a support team a long time ago. And for anyone who knows anything about support, you train your support engineers on soft skills, right? How to deliver a difficult message with empathy, right? And what we realized was we didn't do any of that with the agent, right? We train our human agents on this, but we never trained our AI agent, Agentforce, on this. So we spent a lot of time rewriting our topics, bringing that language into the topics. Empathy. If someone has a Sev 0, I hope that never happens, apologize straight away, right? So when you're thinking about this world of agents, think about it the same way you do a human. Right? Yes, they need to have the knowledge, right? But you also think about the soft skills. How do I make sure I want it to respond the way I want it to respond with the soft skills? So we spent a lot of time on that, on making sure it's kind of much more, I wouldn't say human-like, because we don't want to pretend it's a human, but it's much more friendlier in how it comes back on certain things. All right, so we had some learnings along the way, and I wanted to share some of them with you on how we iterate on feedback. The first one is, I made a decision a few months ago to take down the search functionality from the Help portal. And I see some smiles in the room because I got a lot of strong feedback from some people that I shouldn't have took search down. And what we did was we took it down because we wanted to funnel that volume into the agent. We believed Agentforce could do just a good job as search. Turns out it couldn't, right? And we got some strong feedback in the community. I responded on why we did it. We based it on data. 1.7% of our users use search, but it was the wrong decision, right? Because our power users use search a lot, right? But this is why this is really important. This allowed us to go back to our product teams and our engineering teams and say, hey, Agentforce isn't good enough at just search, right? So we made the change, we listened to the customers and we brought it back. And now we're working very closely with our product teams. When I say search, it's just people just want potentially the hyperlink. They don't want an answer, right? They're looking for documentation. And so we're improving that now based on that feedback. The other thing is we believe Agentforce should be our front door into customer success. So we removed customers when they wanted to create a case to come through agent. And here's the thing, I know this frustrated some people, but every company in the world, when they launch agents on their support portal, is going to want their agents to be able to create a case. Right? That's what they're going to want them to do. So when we started, we realized it was too cumbersome. It was going back and forth with lots of questions. Did you mean this? Did you mean this? Did you mean this? And it was frustrating people. So we had to rewrite our topics again to streamline it. And now what we see is our agent is actually 20% faster at creating a case than our old case submission form. So it's getting better. But these are these examples that I'm telling you, in a world of agents, you'll do things, you'll learn, you won't understand why it's doing that, you'll iterate on it, and it keeps on getting better over time. And that's kind of the focus that you need to have. All right, so there's a lot in this next slide. So this is where my team now spends a lot of time. What makes a good conversation? So if you think about ChatGPT, Claude, any of them things you're doing, what makes a good conversation in that experience? And so we spend a lot of time now. As I mentioned earlier on, I have new roles in my team that I never thought I would have had 18 months ago. I have a prompt designer, I have agent managers, I have people that lead our data side implementation, right? All new roles. And we spend this time looking at how do we make answers better. And so the first thing you do is you baseline what good looks like. Right, so for us, that meant working with our support engineers on some of our top cases and saying, how do you respond for this case? And that allowed us to build up this library that I mentioned earlier on of these golden utterances, right? So you're testing the agent constantly to see, is it responding the way that we want it responding to that one? And you can see we've actually built up that library now. We have 1,300 utterances that we're constantly evaluating the agent against to see if it's doing a good enough job. But that's one thing. The next thing you need is you need real conversations. And so we use Agentforce Observability. There was a session on this earlier today where we're able to look at the conversations and see how the agent's responding and can we make it better. And all of this feeds into how do we drive improvements in the agent. And you can see down the bottom, I mentioned these two things earlier on, service quality, right? Then as we're evaluating the agent, we're looking at, is it doing it in the voice, the tone that we want it to do? We look at things like AI quality. In a world of agents, you look at latency. How fast is it responding? Is it responding fast enough? Things like your chunk size, etc., impact all of this. We spend a lot of time on this to try and make the agent come back with answers better. Okay, so I mentioned earlier on that today we're at 62% resolution. When we launched it was at 40%, which was okay. 62% is okay. But where we want to get is we want to get to 80% by the end of the year. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how we're planning to do that. And before I do that, there's one or two things I want to mention here on our roadmap. So one of the things that blew my mind more, I'm going to have questions at the end, so hold on for me. One of the things that blew my mind is language expansion. We're now live in 7 languages outside of English, right, with our agent. And we started with Japanese. Anyone who knows Japanese, it's a pretty hard language to translate in. Right? But here's the incredible thing, is our agent does real-time translation. So what does that mean? A customer in Japan comes to our help portal, and they ask a question in Japanese. The LLM translates that into English, uses our English content base to source an answer and respond back, and then translate back into Japanese, pretty much instantly. We went live. I was super nervous. We had a call with our team in Japan that night, and I asked them, how is it? They went, Bernard, it's good. For anybody who knows anything about Japanese culture, good equals excellent to the rest of the world. So we felt really, really good about that. And that then enabled us to turn it on. French, German, Italian, Spanish. We're getting ready to go live in Korean, etc. And if you think about it, translating support content into different languages is a huge burden for companies, right? It holds them back sometimes from going live in different languages. So if you can have an agent that's using your English content be live in all of these different languages, it's a huge unlock for companies. Massive, massive unlock. So we've done that and we see really good results. The other thing was we went live on the Informatica portal and the Slack portal with the same agent, same content base, and we were able to go live really, really quickly. So it allows you to do that. Where we're going, I'm probably most excited about in-app. So the problem we have today on our help portal is most of our volume is unauthenticated. So the agent doesn't know who you are when you ask it a question, right? It tries to answer, doesn't have a lot of context. You probably see this with ChatGPT. It's much better when you're logged in, right? Because it has memory, it has context about you. So what we're going to do, we're getting ready to launch in March in a dark mode, is inside Salesforce, we have a question mark in the top right-hand corner. Has anyone ever clicked on that question mark inside Salesforce? Okay, 2. All right, most people don't even know it exists, to be honest with you. It has a list of links. It has a link to the help portal, etc. Very, very low volume. We're going to replace that question mark with our help agent. So you click on the question mark and it will launch the agent. Now here's where this gets really powerful. Now we know who you are, right? You don't need to log in. You're already logged into your org. We have the context about you, right? We can see what screen you're on, what error message you had, right? Without being creepy, we're getting this data so that we can help and feed that into the prompt. Right, so you think about that. If you now ask a question to the agent, it has context about you, what you're doing and how you're doing. And what's great is it just appears on the right-hand pane. So I can stay in the flow of work. I don't need to go out of Salesforce, search on Google, launch the help portal. Now we're going to start very, very very small. We're going to go to 5% of our traffic on just 2 products because we want to learn. We want to learn and see how it goes, get feedback on it, and then we'll expand. But I truly believe, my dream is that our help portal volume goes away and that everybody actually uses our in-app agent, because I think it's going to be so much better than what's available on the help portal. The second piece I mentioned earlier on, Agentforce script. One of our biggest feedbacks to our product team was, hey, there's times when we don't want to use the LLM. That's a weird thing to say, right? But if you think about something like case creation, it's a very deterministic flow. If this, then this, then this, then create the case. When you feed that all to an LLM, sometimes it does strange things that you don't ask it to do. So with Agentforce scripting, we're now going to migrate over to that. We have the ability to put deterministic flows inside the agent. So case creation will be deterministic. I don't want to use the LLM for that. I want to use the LLM for questions and answers. And so these are how our learnings, our feedback has influenced the product. The other thing, multimodal reasoning, sorry, losing my English today. The ability for you to upload a PDF or whatever that might be, and for the agent to look at that, understand what you're doing. That's something that we're working on as well. And then one I get really excited about too is email as a service agent. And what do I mean by that? Today we send a lot of emails in customer success. We use Marketing Cloud because again, we're customer zero. Most of these emails have a do not reply. Right? It's a black box. And it's the same most companies in the world, right? You reply to them emails, them marketing emails, you don't get a response. Imagine when we have the agent in email. Customers can respond to that email and the agent will have a conversation with you back and forth. Right? We could never do that. We never had enough humans to try and manage. It always seems weird when I say humans, by the way. I don't know why. We never had enough humans to manage all of that email volume. Now we're going to put an agent, same help agent, inside that email, which is really, really cool. And then Agentforce Voice. Hopefully you've heard us talk about that. We just went live about 2 weeks ago with a pilot on our IVR where 5% of our US traffic is now talking to the agent over the IVR. And I actually think that voice will be the UX of these agents. Whether that's ChatGPT, whether that's Claude, we've all dreamed of an assistant that we could just have a conversation with, right? It's just the technology was never there. Siri, Alexa annoy me most of the time. I feel like I have a fight with them to try and get them to understand me. Could be the Irish accent, I don't know. But now the technology's there, right? If you've seen some of the work OpenAI have done, the demos where they're showing the kid being trained with the maths tutor, and it's all over voice, right? So we're now leveraging them capabilities, and we'll bring that to the help portal too, where you can have a conversation with the agent versus typing. If you choose, right, you'll have that option. All right, so that's my slide. So I want to open up. I have plenty of time for questions. I saw one hand earlier on, so maybe, oh, I was early, so now the mic runner really needs to run. Sorry. So I saw one question here. Yeah.
What counts as case resolution?
What counts as case resolution?
So you give figures for your case resolution.
Great question. So you can still hear me. So we measure this the same way we measure human chat today. And all service companies do this, which is you interact with the agent and you don't create a case. Now you're going to say to me, Bernard, that's not true resolution, right? Because maybe a lot of people left frustrated. So, and you're right. So there's 2 other things we look at. We also have something called customer confirmed resolution, which is we ask you the question, did we solve your issue, yes or no? The problem with that, it's the same as a thumbs up, thumbs down at the bottom of a content page. You get very little responses, very little response. So close it out, exactly. So what we're doing is I want to move away from this metric and I want to move away from a CSAT metric. What we want to do is using observability, we're going to have a real-time analysis of every single conversation. And that model will then tell us, was that a good conversation, a bad conversation? And then, because that will be a truer reflection of resolution. Exactly. So I know this is not a perfect metric. We started today the same way we think about human chat because it felt like a good place to chat. And that's what chat, that sounds weird again, but that was why we went after it there. But we will get better on that metric.
I think what's interesting is you pointed out that's how companies around the world do it, which means then you can benchmark.
Exactly.
I guess what we think about is the Salesforce bubble, right? Whereas you're looking at how all the other companies do it and you can compare across that.
Totally.
So let's be honest, even if yours is artificially inflated in terms of they were happy or they didn't open a case. So it's everybody else's.
Exactly. Exactly. But you are so right. It needs to be on 100% of conversation. And I spend a lot of time talking to customers that are using Agentforce. I had a call last week with OpenTable, and all the conversations we're having is how do you measure quality, right? Because we know that there needs to be, and that's what we want observability to do, 100% analysis on every single conversation. Great question. Any other questions? It's all from here. Yes.
Hello.
Hi, Sasha.
The last time we spoke about this, you said that one of the ways that you were collecting feedback about this was through the Agentforce Help Council.
Yeah.
Are you able to share any of the findings that you've got from that so far?
A lot of that survey that I showed you earlier on, we use the Agentforce Council as part of that survey. So when we're doing these surveys, a lot of the people that signed up for the council are part of that. So that one I just showed you a few minutes ago, that's from them. That's them giving us feedback on what's working, what's not working. So they're part of that survey that we do. Hi. Oh, I thought you had a question. Oh, sorry. Any other questions? It means you have to have a question now. No? Well, make sure you give us feedback, by the way. We'd love feedback on the session, how we can get better. I hope it was in some way useful for you, and hopefully I'll see you in the bar, I think, later. I think this was the last session, which is always the nice one to have. All right. Yeah, you have a question? Go.
Maybe it's not really a question, but because you said there are like different kind of users that reach the page, right? So somebody really, started their journey, or somebody that is really into the product. So how the agent will change the way to explain their...
Great. That's a great question, actually. So if I maybe just repeat what I think you're saying to us. So how do you make sure the agent responds in a way to the level of the knowledge on the person on the other side? Right? Because today it responds similar. You could be an MVP, tons of certifications in Salesforce, and it responds to you the same way it responds to a novice who's 2 weeks into their Salesforce journey. It's a great question. So this is why in-app is so important to me, because when you're in-app, you're automatically authenticated. We can see things like, are you a ranger? Right? Do you have Salesforce certifications? And we can feed that into the agent so that it knows it needs to respond in a different type of response. And that's, again, the problem we have with the help portal is about 90% of that traffic is unauthenticated. So we have no idea of the skill set of that person on the other side. And so that's why in-app is a big unlock for us, because you're thinking about it exactly right, is we're just going to frustrate a Salesforce expert if we're kind of responding with basic language. Yeah, it's a great question. Totally. Yeah. And even how we respond with step by step, like, do they need really basic step by step, or is it, no, we're just going to give them the answer because they kind of know what they're doing? Yeah, great question. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. See you later. Thank you.